Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, but Apple Podcasts especially helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show, and thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, you would be an absolute hero of ours. And again, thank you so much to anyone that's already done that. You're an absolute legend. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going not bad at all, Mark. Yeah, still here in my lockdown cupboard. I am finally back at work. As I think I mentioned last week that furlough was coming to an end. So yeah, I have been at my laptop working away the last few days, which is eating into my gaming time, sadly, but it has been nice to have a little bit more purpose day to day, which has been kind of sorely lacking over the last 6 or 7 weeks. But yeah, that's how things are going for me. How about you, Mark? How you been doing? What you been playing?
Well, as you know, Lewis, I was actually quite ill yesterday. Not coronavirus, but ill nonetheless, which has delayed the recording of this podcast, which is unfortunate, and I apologise unreservedly to the listeners. However, what I have been playing is still the same thing that I've been playing for weeks, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I am excruciatingly close to the end now, to the point that I'm quite annoyed that I haven't finished it in time for this podcast, despite the fact that it's been delayed. So yeah, still just cracking on with that. Still loving it. Absolutely great. If you're interested in Final Fantasy, for God's sake, go and play it. If you have ever been interested in trying a Final Fantasy game, this is a superb place to start. It's a very modern retelling of what was an incredibly amazing classic game, and everyone should play it. Everyone should play it. But Lewis, what have you been playing?
Well, Mark, to be honest, an apology to the listeners as well, because I've still just been playing XCOM Chimera Squad for, I think, the 3rd week in a row now.
Wow. I'm very surprised at how much this game has stuck with you.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that I'm still playing it is that it gates its progress, right? So you can't just rattle through it. Things move at a certain pace, and obviously the battles take a certain amount of time and all that. So I've not sunk hours and hours and hours into it and managed to push through too quickly. But yeah, in terms of my actual interest in the game, it's just grown as it's gone on, to be honest. I got a little bit concerned at the point I was at when we did this last week, that as I was scaling up and my squad was scaling up and I was getting more abilities and improving everyone's health and mobility and that kind of thing, it did feel a little bit like it was going to become overly easy, because really up to that point, none of the battles had given me too much grief, to be totally honest. But now where I am is right at the end of the second third of the game. So as I mentioned last week, there's 3 factions you have to take down. I've just taken down the second one, moving on to the third. And at that point, things really are cranking up. Battles have become a lot more difficult. The AI is smarter. It's not missing its shots as often as it was at the beginning of the game, which is like an XCOM classic.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, overall, like, I'm still really enjoying it. There's not too much I need to add, because the game doesn't change in any drastic ways. Essentially, it just changes how the AI responds to you and gives you slight improvements on each of your characters. So it's just more good fun as it goes along, basically. And the more you're in the rhythm of it and you understand the systems, the more you can get out of it. That's what I've found so far. I'm hoping to be finished it by next week, and definitely still want to give Gears Tactics a go as well, just to compare them and see which one wins out in this funny little battle of the tactical shooters that we've had recently.
Yeah, it's very interesting, that, I suppose, isn't it? I've got a good friend who is very into XCOM and loved games like that, and played Chimera Squad and Gears Tactics. He said he absolutely loves Gears. I think that it was his favourite out of the two as well. Nice, I think there's maybe a bit deeper story going on there in comparison to what you might get in Chimera Squad or XCOM. A lot more character-focused story anyway. Yeah. I'll be very interested to see what you think of that if you ever actually do get around to playing it, because we're coming into the busy part of the year. The Last of Us 2 is on our doorstep, as we will discuss later in the podcast. But with that, Lewis, I think it's time for the news. Alright, news item number 1. A leak has revealed that the next Call of Duty game will be called Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. This was initially leaked on Twitter by a prolific Call of Duty leaker called Okami, who I believe we have quoted on this show before. However, the leak has since been corroborated by Eurogamer sources as well, basically meaning that this is correct and this will be what the next game is going to be called. As the name suggests, the game will take place in the 1960s at the height of the Cold War. The game comes only 2 years after Black Ops 4, which is usually on a 3-year rotation. Treyarch, who take care of the Black Ops games, usually rotate with Infinity Ward, who do the Modern Warfare stuff, and Sledgehammer games. However, this game will see Treyarch being supported by Sledgehammer and Raven Software. Raven Software was responsible for doing the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 remake. It's very complicated now, the Call of Duty series naming conventions. I presume that Sledgehammer Games and Raven Software have been brought in to reduce the 3-year development cycle for Treyarch to 2 years. And like the previous Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which was a reboot of the Modern Warfare series, this also is feeling to me like a reboot of the Black Ops series, because the original Black Ops game was also set in the Cold War.
Yeah, both the rumour appears to be correct, and yeah, I think that your last point there, that this notion of Call of Duty essentially soft rebooting all their franchises, looks like what they're doing, or at least a big part of their strategy. And I wonder how much all of that plays into this transition towards next generation. You know, are they trying to essentially restart those lines of their games so that they can kind of develop them anew on the new platforms, or is it just coincidence? You know, I'm intrigued by that idea of them shortening the 3-year cycle, which has been a huge part of what Call of Duty has been over the last decade. It looks like they're doubling down on some of their most important lines, or their most popular lines of these games, so to speak. What's your take on it, Mark? I mean, you're way more versed in Call of Duty than I am. As a reboot for Black Ops kind of what you would want them to do next?
I'm not sure if it's what I personally would want, because in general I want new things. I don't want reboots of old things, you know. But rebooting the Modern Warfare franchise, which is, I can only assume, the most popular Call of Duty franchise by probably quite a big distance. But then the second biggest one, and probably one of the more critically acclaimed ones, is definitely the Black Ops series as well. So the fact that they are rebooting these, and this is assuming that the Black Ops Cold War is going to be a reboot, we are just assuming that just now. But I think it's probably quite a smart move for them in reality. As you said, we're about to be into a new generation. New players will want to get involved in these consoles as well. Do you know what I mean? This will be probably one of the games that they want to play most on that console is going to be a Call of Duty game, because all their friends play Call of Duty, you know? So it makes a lot of sense to me. These are beloved franchises. If they're kind of bringing them back in a meaningful way, I know Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the one that came out in 2019 there, it was a big success. It was one of the best Call of Duties in quite a long period of time. I think since kind of World War II, they've been trying to put a bit more effort into the story side of things, which seem to have waned in a lot of years, and not just the focus on the multiplayer, which is of course the cornerstone of the franchise, whether or not people want to accept that or not. I suppose I think that it's a fine move from Call of Duty, as long as it does justice to the original Black Ops campaign, which I do remember actually being quite good. And this will have a campaign, unlike Black Ops 4, of course, which was online only and had Blackout, which was the first Call of Duty venture into Battle Royale. Now they have Warzone as a sort of standalone as well, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens with that as well, because obviously that is semi-tied to Modern Warfare, but is also a standalone game in itself, because I have Warzone, but I've never played Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So I think that will continue to roll on as its Battle Royale, as I'm sure many people would have suspected. This will be much more of a traditional Call of Duty game, e.g. story and online multiplayer modes, your dominations, capture the flags, death matches, all that, you know. So
you do definitely think that those kind of quote-unquote traditional multiplayer options will be in the game then? I keep wondering if at some point they're just going to go all Warzone.
They've got to be, man. For Call of Duty, it's got to be there, you know. It's got to be. As I said, that is the cornerstone of the franchise, is the online stuff. It 100% is. The competitive online multiplayers, those death matches are going nowhere, search and destroys are going nowhere, dominations are going nowhere. None of that is changing as far as I'm concerned. It's too profitable business for Activision, you know, to mess with the formula too much. And now that they have their own Battle Royale standalone separately from the mainline series, which I think is also a good move. That means that the games can go on in their traditional manner, still being immensely popular, but they also have this one foot in the Battle Royale genre as well, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I just find that split so interesting, because you wonder if players that are really into Warzone will stick there and not play the new deathmatch on Black Ops Cold War, or is it a case that people are willing to jump between these things? It feels like maybe down the line they'll start just releasing, you know, you'll have Warzone, which is just all of your online modes, including a Battle Royale, and a deathmatch and all the traditional stuff, and then they'll just release a new campaign every year. But then that flies in the face of what's actually profitable, and as you kept pointing out, the thing that people are buying the games for, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people really, in reality, and I know that there's a lot of people that shout about it on the internet, but as a percentage of the total number of Call of Duty games sold, I wonder how many of those people actually bought it for the campaign. Yeah. I reckon that number is staggeringly low. Totally. I would be very surprised. Would be very surprised if they made that move. I think it's much more likely that Call of Duty continues being Call of Duty in the way it is, and Warzone just stands alone just as its Battle Royale thing, as a live service game that will be continually updated, season passes, all that stuff that you would expect, you know. All right, and news item number 2. PlatinumGames, Lewis, have been very, very busy this week. Firstly, they released the kickstarted Wonderful 101 remaster, which came out of the blue a few months ago that they were going to do this. Or was it before Christmas? Maybe it was before Christmas. This also launched their whole Platinum 4 event and was the first game as well that they were going to be self-publishing, which was a big new thing for them, and they were also opening a new studio. They were opening a new studio in Tokyo as opposed to, I think it was Osaka that they were initially based before. So a lot of things happening there. They're moving into self-publishing, which is great. Thumbs up. The game itself, however, maybe not brilliant. It's currently sitting at a 76 on the PS4 and a 70 on Switch. Honestly, it seems pretty divisive. I know that we normally do games released as shout-outs, but this one kind of wraps in with a whole bunch of other stuff, so we're doing it now. The game does seem quite divisive. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, which is a hell of a good score, but then GameSpot gave it a 4. So it's it seems as if people respond very differently to this game. From what I've read, though, the remake and the game itself are quite charming, as the original was. If you like the original, you're probably going to like this one. There does seem to be a few technical issues, though, and the controls coming across from the Wii U, which is of course a lot of gestures and a lot of movement controls, to the more traditional controls of a Switch. There seems to be maybe a few hiccups here and there in that as well. Overall, if you like the original, especially enough if you kickstarted this one, I'm sure you'll probably like the game fine. However, because of the release of the Wonderful 101, VGC interviewed studio heads at Sushi Inaba and game director Hideaki Kamiya, in which we learned a few sort of inside tidbits about what's going on at PlatinumGames. We'll put links to the interview in the show notes over at PlayersToo.com, as always. The first thing that I wanted to mention was Project GG, which you might remember, it was a good number of months ago now, Platinum released a trailer for, and it looked nothing like what Platinum had done before. Kamiya is saying that not only is it like nothing Platinum has done before, but it's nothing like anyone has done before, which I find very interesting. Within the interview, he even acknowledges that, people say this all the time, but this actually is something completely different and something completely new, which I find quite interesting to like call that out. Makes me believe him slightly more, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that game initially looked really interesting from even the trailer, which saw this superhero, in quotes, grow to a gigantic size to fight a gigantic monster, sort of Pacific Rim style. It just looked quite interesting and quite different. And if that's going to be happening in real time, in actual gameplay where you can just transform into a gigantic man, that's going to be awesome. And I don't think anyone has done that before.
Probably no one has done that yet. Does that qualify, though, as being like a big game-changing thing?
I don't know, but it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, fair enough, eh?
The second, and probably much more interesting to a lot more people, thing, rumours had been swirling for a while that Xbox might be looking to purchase someone in the Japanese market. This was back when they were buying people left, right and centre, including Ninja Theory and Obsidian as well. It was back around about that sort of time, and PlatinumGames were one of the developers that were very much top of the list when that was mentioned. They both, in this interview, deny that was ever even a thing. But Xbox have been talking a lot about breaking into the Japanese market. Phil Spencer himself has said that they're not happy with their position in the Japanese market, which is so dominated by PlayStation and Nintendo. I think that this would be a great move for them, personally.
For Xbox, you mean?
For Xbox, yeah.
Because it definitely would be. I don't think it would be a great move for PlatinumGames at all, given that they can get a lot of sales through those two other platforms in Japan alone, never mind globally, you know. But you're totally right that Microsoft really it's good that they are aware that they have a sort of Japan problem, that they don't really have the penetration there that they've got in other parts of the world, and that they are looking at ways of addressing it. From their perspective, PlatinumGames would be a nail on, because they make good games. They are a very recognisable company. They bring a lot of clout, so a perfect pick for them. But it was really interesting. I thought that Platinum are basically saying they're quite happy doing their own thing, and they don't really need to be brought into a big family like that.
Yeah, that is true, although Insomniac said that about PlayStation and then they ended up getting bought as well. So who knows, all these things are swings and roundabouts, but it does seem as though Platinum Games are making a big push for self-publishing, and that seems like a really big goal for them. So I admire that goal, and I wish them all the best. Definitely. And I hope that they stay independent so that I can play them on my PlayStation. Just the final thing that came out of this interview as well was about Bayonetta 3, and in actual fact the final question of this interview was about Bayonetta 3, which was announced back in 2017, if you can believe it. Kamiya was basically asked, is he fed up being asked if Bayonetta 3 has been cancelled? Because Platinum Games have released quite a lot of games since 2017, none of which are Bayonetta 3. And there are games that have been announced, been released, and have been out for quite a long period of time now, with no word on Bayonetta 3 at all. On that question, Kayame answered this.
I'm on Twitter, so I see a lot of comments every day. I'm happy that there's still anticipation for the title, but one thing I would like to address is the trend I'm seeing, which is people who are starting to ask if the game has been cancelled. I want you guys to take any concerns you have like that and throw them out the window immediately, because we're still hard at work on it and it hasn't been cancelled by any means. Please look forward to it.
And although I believe him, obviously, because he wouldn't have said that if the game had been cancelled or if there was any rumblings that it might be cancelled. However, I think that along with Metroid Prime 4, it is reasonable to assume that there has been some sort of development issues with this game. I think that it's nearly impossible not to say that. It was announced in 2017 and we have heard absolutely nothing until now, until that small statement in an interview about a different game. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose my question to you is, do you think we see anything from Bayonetta 3 anytime soon?
Hard to say. I mean, I guess we thought that it might have been part of the big Platinum 4 push, whenever that was.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I think that we both said that, actually, that it's got to be, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Allegedly, they've still got another item to go on that, but God knows when that's supposed to be happening.
Because of that bizarre botched final one on April Fool's Day.
That was a whole dumb situation. But yeah, we were both very confident that we were going to get something to do with Bayonetta then, but nothing.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they have been announced as part of any of these showcases over the next few months. If they are doing anything at all, if they're going to do their own showcase, if they're going to turn up somewhere else, it feels like, having said this now publicly, that they ought to show something, even if it is just a logo cinematic type thing again, or if they do have a little bit of gameplay to share. I pretty much agree with what you said there, that it's hard to imagine that there hasn't been some sort of issue here, unless they announced that they were making that before they had actually begun development, and maybe even quite a bit before they'd begun development, which is hard to imagine them doing, given that it just leads to this kind of question, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I know that a while ago we were talking about transparency in what games are coming, but this is what happens when you announce a game too early. You get constant questions over it. You get people wondering if it's been cancelled. You get people wondering if it's going to be any good, or if it's in development hell, and all this. Do you know what I mean? This is the other side of that sword. You know,
but why not just make a statement like this every so often? You know, we're still working on it. Don't worry.
I don't disagree, Lewis. I don't disagree. I think that we could use far more transparency. I'm just saying that this is the situation that develops when you announce a game early. Alright, and news item number 3. IGN have announced their schedule for the Summer of Gaming event in June. So this is basically IGN taking over from E3. But only they're spreading it out over a whole month. So some of the key dates, and I'm just going to run down these very, very quickly. There's loads more in the full schedule. If you want to go and read that, we'll put links to it over in the show notes at PlayersToo.com. It starts off on the 4th. There's nothing yet on the 4th. However, I believe that something big will happen on the 4th, because big events like this don't normally kick off with nothing. Yeah. Then on the 5th, you've got the IGN Expo debut, in which we are promised exclusive reveals, trailers, gameplay demos, and unannounced games, which is superb. And then on the 6th, you've got the PC Gaming Show, and then you've got the Guerrilla Collective Showcase on the same day. The Guerrilla Collective Showcase, if you remember correctly, is a showcase of indie games, effectively, over 3 days. So that is on the 6th, on the 7th, and it finishes on the 8th. Also on the 8th is Upload VR Showcase, so if you're into your VR games, maybe worth watching that. And also the IGN Expo 2, which again is more exclusive reveals, gameplay, trailers, and unannounced games, so definitely tune in for that one. Then on June the 9th, we've got the IGN Expo 3. This does not have any unannounced games, unfortunately, but there's loads of gameplay and trailers it looks like is coming, including gameplay for Yakuza Like a Dragon, Skate XL, and New World, which is Amazon's new game. Then on June the 11th, we have CD Projekt Red live stream, which is obviously going to be about Cyberpunk. And on the same day, EA Play Live. Then on the 15th, we're getting an unannounced game revealed, which I think because that one stands alone, maybe something big, maybe something cool and interesting.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. Although we did get that for Tony Hawk, I suppose.
That is also true. That's cool and interesting.
No,
That's
it's cool and interesting. It's not huge,
love
though,
that thing. Just because you don't like skating. Also on the same day, on the 15th, we're getting Mafia Definitive Edition. That's the remake from the ground up of the original Mafia game. We're getting gameplay on that day, so
nice,
if you're interested in that game, definitely tune in for that. Then on the 18th, we're getting an unannounced gameplay deep dive, which will almost certainly be one of the games announced within the showcase. And then on the 24th, we're also getting an unannounced game reveal, which I think is the last day, so I reckon that'll be a big one as well. They've also announced alongside this, they're doing charity work, they're doing charity streams before the start of each daily showcase, if you want to put it that way, or each daily stream that they're doing. A lot of these are speedruns done by Games Done Quick, which I absolutely love. And any of the money raised is going to the World Health Organization's COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund, which is great. IGN have also said that Blizzard are going to be there, Facebook/Oculus are going to be there, Stadia are going to be there, Square Enix are going to be there, Ubisoft are going to be there, and Xbox are going to be there as well. But none of the dates are confirmed. And they've also emphasised that this is a fluid situation and these dates could change and some people might drop out and others might join, you know?
Yeah.
So what do you think of this?
It's cool.
Sounds pretty cool,
yeah,
according to me.
It's definitely cool. There's a lot to it. A bit more than I expected they would have, to be honest. From the schedule, you can see what certain companies are announcing on certain dates, but also just the depth of it. You know, they've got their own coverage. They're building in, like you mentioned, the speed running. They've got these charity streams. They've got all this stuff around gaming icons, which is really cool. So there's
David Hayter interview coming up as well. Big Metal Gear Solid fans out there, tune in for that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
David Hayter's an awesome guy.
And that's like through those kind of things we'll get more on the games that they're announcing, but also just on the history of gaming and these huge games that we all love. So it's a cool thing. It's an interesting way to try and replace E3, so to speak. I feel like if anyone's going to do it well, IGN have got the kind of resources for that. What's your take?
Well, I agree with you. I think IGN do have the resources to pull this off. Also, interestingly, they're doing this over a vastly longer period of time than E3. Obviously, being an online event, they are able to do that more easily than if it was a physical event somewhere. I'm very interested in the fact that IGN have just laid this bare as well. Like, they've said you are getting an unannounced game release on this day. Before, that's all usually speculation, you know, whereas IGN have said, nope, we're announcing a game on this day and this day and this day and this day. This day will be more about gameplay stuff. On this day, we're doing these kind of things. You know what I mean? They've kind of laid it bare, but does that take some of the hype out of it for you?
I guess a little, but we've been talking so much recently about managing expectations. We should say, like, most of these games are going to probably be slightly smaller games. That, you know, they're not massive because none of the massive publishers have been mentioned within this schedule yet, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they've said that Xbox is going to be there. They've said that Ubisoft's going to be there. They've said that Square Enix is going to be there. They've said that Stadia is going to be there. They've said that Blizzard's going to be there. It's not insignificant companies. EA's got their EA Live Play. CD Projekt Red is there. I mean, these are big gaming companies. You know?
Totally. Sorry, what I meant by that though was that the likes of your Ubisofts, etc., haven't been announced within the context of this actual schedule, right? Most of the companies.
Well, they're doing their Ubisoft forward thing slightly separately.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think we'll get some stuff filtered in from your Xboxes, your Ubisofts, and that within what's been announced here. But by and large, what's been laid out so far is kind of a smaller thing in terms of the level of games that we're probably going to get. But I am really excited to see that stuff as well, and I think most gamers will be, and certainly should be. But I guess over time we'll start to get those bigger publishers announcing what they're doing within this, and then we'll sort of see how big and how deep a thing this is.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you about the calibre of the announcements. So do you think we'll be getting fairly few big AAA games here?
I would think...
Or maybe none?
I would think between none and a few, because the major publishers are probably going to do their own thing. You know, I can't see a Sony or an Xbox or a Ubisoft or even an EA announce something under an IGN banner rather than just doing it within their own showcases. Maybe if IGN just kind of co-ops those showcases, that's a different thing. But I think for a lot of the the unannounced games that that have been listed here so far, it's largely going to be AA titles or interesting indies or some online stuff. But there's still loads to be excited about with that. I think we are all looking for things beyond the big publishers to get excited about. So IGN giving that sort of thing a platform, a huge platform like they've got, is really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm pretty excited to see all this stuff. I mean, a 3-day indie event, I'm loving
Totally.
that. I'm absolutely loving that. Yeah, and if we do get a couple of big announcements here and there, I think that's all it needs. To be honest with you, we don't have the expectations around this as we do about E3, where everybody has to bring their A game or you're going to end up quote unquote losing E3.
Yeah.
It's a much more casual environment. I think IGN are consciously trying to make it a more casual environment where publishers or developers or designers or whoever can come and present their game. And yeah, it's great that someone the size of IGN, with the clout that IGN has in the industry, using it in this way to give people a platform. And I do hope that a lot of the smaller devs, the kind of AA type games, your indie type games, use these platforms and use these platforms effectively to show off their games,
Particularly because IGN can then bookend any announcements with, their journalists talking about the games, getting some hands-on time, showing it off in a deeper sense.
IGN articles that shared on a Reddit. Suddenly your game's getting thousands of views that it would never have had before.
Yeah, even had it appeared at E3, it would still be part of a much bigger mix, whereas IGN can give things focus. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing.
Totally agree. Alright, news item number 4. PlayStation has moments ago, Lewis, had a Last of Us Part 2 State of Play, and God almighty does this game look good, and also it's visually beautiful. Both of those things are very, very true. It is stunningly good looking. The State of Play was presented by Neil Druckmann, who's the game director, for those of you that don't know. And first of all, he started talking about the story. We learned that Ellie, after the events of the first game, basically grew up in Jackson, Wyoming, it looks like, which is a sort of a settlement that has some peace within the world of The Last of Us. However, after a, quotes, traumatizing event, you end up travelling to Seattle, Washington, where most of the game takes place, not just in the city, they point out as well, in the suburbs and in other locations in the city. And within Washington, as well as the usual infected that you have to come up against, you will also come up against 2 warring factions, one of which is the Washington Liberation Front, which seems to be a sort of militia group, and the Seraphites, is that how we're saying that?
I think so, yeah.
Which is a zealous religious group. So they're the baddies. They also showed off 2 new enemy types. They showed off the Shambler, which was a slower moving, bigger enemy, but had pustules all over it, which shot poison at you when you shot them. So aren't they lovely?
Lovely stuff.
And the Stalkers, which are like stealth zombies from what I was working out, which is a truly horrifying concept.
Yeah. They were already kind of good enough at like creeping out of the dark at you, so something that's even more stealth focused. Good grief.
The clickers from the first Last of Us game are hands down one of the best zombie types I've ever come across. But they are absolutely terrifying. So to think that there is stealthy ones of those is freaking me out a little bit. The whole trailer, I've got to say, and we'll get onto the gameplay in a bit, was tense, man. It was tense.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, tension is what this series does, right? Like, that is the bread and butter of what The Last of Us is. So, yeah, extremely tense.
So onto the gameplay. They showed 8 minutes of gameplay at the end in like a big block, but they also showed quite a lot of gameplay throughout. They also mentioned side characters, which will be part of the game and will help you in combat and will go on Ellie throughout our journey, as The Last of Us 1 did. And obviously in The Last of Us 1 you had Ellie with you for the vast majority of the time anyway, certainly. They also showed off the crafting / upgrading / menu systems, which look very much like the first game. Very, very simple, which I like a lot, and I liked a lot about the first game as well. And the crafting system just seems to be the same, where you can just craft stuff on the fly very quickly to use, and it's just very clean, and I just like it quite a lot. The combat itself, though, is absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. The Last of Us Part 2 kind of got in a wee bit of trouble when the first trailer came out because it was so brutal and people were questioning, is this all really necessary and whatever. I don't know, what did you think about it all? No, not just that, the whole gameplay in general.
To like the furore around that brutality originally was overdone. I thought the action looks pretty savage from that trailer. Like, there's a lot of swinging big bits of wood with nails through it into people's faces and shanking people through their throats.
Yeah, this is definitely going to earn its 18 rating. I can tell you that. I think it was slightly overblown in the trailer as well, just FYI, but I think it was because there was that much violence in a trailer.
Yeah.
Not the fact that there's that much violence in the game.
Exactly.
You know? But in this one, what did you think of the gameplay?
Yeah, the gameplay looked incredible. Everything that it showed us, the bigger world, the new ways that you could move around in those spaces.
You get a horse, man.
Yeah, you do get a horse. I wonder if that horse can be killed. That's always a big issue in these games.
Don't do it to me. Please, Last of Us, no. Not again. In fact, they did that in the first game. I'm sure they killed the horse. It was really sad.
Then on top of that, like you said, the combat looks really, really... I mean, it looks fun. I've got to say, as much as it looks brutal, it looks like a good fun system to be in. A lot of quick decisions happening. Great scenes in the longer gameplay section where Ellie would grab someone and use them as a human shield and pop a shot off, and then deal with this person, and then run around this corner.
Yeah, the way that person was playing was really impressive.
Yeah, and they were obviously trying to show us a lot of what you can do through that.
Of course.
And that kind of flow is probably going to be quite difficult to achieve. But that feeling of being able to change your approach mid encounter. So they said even that you can be essentially flee from a fight and then restart your stealthy mode once you've kind of lost them.
Yeah. You can regain your stealth advantage basically by running away effectively.
That's how to do it.
Absolutely. We won't be playing like that guy. We'll be paralysed in fear in a corner somewhere or running away. No, I honestly thought it looked fantastic. The level of detail and things just was unbelievable. I can't believe how good this game looks. One of the things as well that I noticed is when she bent down to pick up the ammo that someone else had dropped from a gun, the magazine just disappeared from the gun on the ground, which I just thought was quite nice. It was just quite a nice little touch. And the fact that you can break through windows, it looks like, as well.
Yep, absolutely.
It was just cool. I mean, it's just tiny little details like that everywhere just looked amazing. And all the environments look great. Like the grass looks great. And they mention as well that from a stealth perspective that the world is overgrown, but that kind of luscious green everywhere just looks amazing. I think the clickers themselves and whatever look quite organic, and I don't know, it's just quite a nice environment. I think that a lot of post-apocalyptic games are bleak and grey and brown and horrible, you know what I mean? But The Last of Us is actually quite green and quite beautiful.
Absolutely,
you know?
And that's something that the first game was quite famous for. But here we saw not just the lush green environments of Seattle, but also snow-capped mountains and the real dense urban spaces that have become flooded. Honestly, it does look gorgeous. You're totally right about that.
One small complaint that I had about it though was I noticed that at one point Ellie gets shot twice, and in relatively quick succession. Very little health came off of her little health bar. I'm kind of hoping that that's just for the trailer, because I remember the first game being quite a lot more punishing than that.
Yeah. I can imagine that they might well have softened that a little bit for a trailer.
That's the thing, is that I'll remember it being when you get shot in The Last of Us, you're like, fuck, I get shot. I can't get shot that often, you
Absolutely,
know?
Yeah.
I hope that maybe doesn't become an issue, but other than that, man, they've absolutely knocked it out of the park,
yeah,
quite frankly. Absolutely knocked it out of the park.
The only thing that kind of concerned me was how they did mention that the spaces were much bigger, and I wonder if it's going to be quite hard to find your way around. The extended gameplay clip we saw, she went from a start point up through a hospital, and at no point did I feel watching it I had any idea where she was trying to go.
There were actually small circles that indicate where you're supposed to be going, and I think that comes from the first game as well.
Nice.
So although we didn't get to see them very often, there was a bit where she initially, when she got out of the water and she went into a garage that was flooded, then she kind of dove underneath to get underneath a door. You noticed that then there was a little circle that kind of indicates where you go, but it's quite natural things like that in the environment that they'll do it. It wouldn't be anything over a big red cross saying come over here, you know what I mean?
I'm very glad it's not that, but just a more open world makes it navigation slightly more challenging, but I never clocked that, so that shows you how subtle it is within the game, which is nice.
Yeah, and also it looks as if the kind of shooting mechanics have slightly changed. You're getting a slightly different crosshair as opposed to their little circle system, which I liked for being not pinpoint accurate. I quite liked that about it. And the more that you aimed, the tighter the circle would be, so the better your aim would be. I just thought that was quite a nice, elegant combat system for the PS3 era, you know what I mean? But yeah, it all looks great. I mean, what do you say? It looks fantastic. It looks as if it could very well live up to the first game, and I absolutely cannot wait to play it.
Yeah, are you fully on the hype train then? Is this
fully
re-engaged?
I'm captain of the hype train, honestly. It is. I am fully on board, man. Fully on board.
Good stuff.
All right, and finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1. The new Mafia games have been released this week. This is Mafia 2 and Mafia 3, the definitive editions. Mafia 2 is currently sitting with a 74 on Metacritic, and Mafia 3 hasn't actually been reviewed because it is incredibly similar to the original Mafia 3. So take that for what it is, I suppose. Mafia 2 has been reviewed pretty similarly to the original, actually, which was a bit hum-ho, to be completely honest with you. And it doesn't seem as though it's maybe meeting expectations of a full remaster. Maybe the graphics aren't quite up to snuff, or maybe the controls are maybe still feeling quite old and quite dated. It seems those seem to be the kind of general directions around it. Again, I'm sure if you liked the original Mafia 2, I'm sure you'll like this, and I'm sure if you like the original Mafia 3, I'm sure you'll like the definitive edition of that as well. But maybe for someone who's on the fence about it, maybe don't worry about it, you know. But soon we'll be getting the original Mafia remake, from the ground up remake, and I'm very, very much looking forward to that, because that was an awesome game the first time around.
Yeah, I think that's the really exciting part of that definitive edition trilogy announcement, isn't it? Getting a full-scale remake of that first game, which was brilliant. It seems the two subsequent games reviewed not as well as that when they originally came out anyway, so it's not massively surprising.
I think the second game was just a bit of a letdown in general, but the third game had like a really, really great story, but it was just hampered by bad gameplay, effectively, which is very unfortunate, because it seems as though the writing was on point. Also released this week, Minecraft Dungeons, which is currently sitting at a 71 on PC and a 75 on Xbox One. Now, this is where scores get a wee bit funny, because we were just saying that the Mafia 2 score wasn't that great. But in actual fact, all the reviews that I've read about Minecraft Dungeons it's pretty great. It's quite good. Maybe a little short, maybe a bit lacking in creativity. It's not really bringing anything new to the table, but it's charming, and it's Minecraft, and it's for kids, and it's kid friendly. And what more do you want from it? So I would encourage people, if they're interested in Minecraft, or they're interested in dungeon crawlers, or they think that this game is in any way of interest to them, don't just look at the scores, read the reviews as well. They were all actually quite positive, and yeah, by all accounts, a hit, I would say.
Good stuff, yeah.
Alright, shout out number 3, the reviews. More reviews, Lewis. Reviews on reviews. The reviews for Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition, are also in now. This does have a very good score on Metacritic. Remember, do not be a slave to that Metacritic and read the fucking reviews. But this has got an 89, which is
nice,
pretty damn high.
That is high.
Pretty damn high. This is a remake of the original Xenoblade, if you are unaware, and by all accounts, it is a pretty damn good one. Updated graphics, updated controls. It looks pretty good, to be honest with you. It's made me kind of want to play it, because this is sort of in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
The game comes out on June the 10th, which is dangerously close to The Last of Us Part 2. However, it does look quite good. It does look quite good, and the reviews say as much, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's always had a bit of a cult following, right? There's people who absolutely love Xenoblade.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But it's not, I think it's basically just not that well known, or that not that well received, you know, outside of Japan over the years. So this is cool that it's come here, and it's going to, you know, to get reviews like this, it must be connecting with people beyond just those diehards. So yeah, it's cool. I'm really interested to see if you do end up trying it out, although I don't imagine you're going to do it anywhere near its release date.
Yeah, that is true. I might come back to it at some point. And interestingly, of course, this is coming out on the Switch as well. The game actually reviewed, like the Mafia games, very similarly to the original. So the original Xenoblade game was well received. So it'll be interesting to see now that more people have got Switches in their hands, more people are playing Nintendo games than have ever played Nintendo games ever before, probably. It'll be interesting to see if this gets more people into that series, you know, than the originals or any of the previous games that were kind of stuck on the Wii systems. Or I know that they had portables on the DS as well, but the consoles were the Wii. Alright, and shout out number 5, Valorant, Lewis. Riot's new game that took Twitch by storm in its closed beta over the last few months. It now has an official release date of June the 2nd, which is very, very close. When it launches in full, it will have more content, including more agents, more maps, more skins, and an additional game mode. This was all announced through Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest as well. And it seems to be one of the very, very few games this summer, considering the global pandemic that we're in, that has hit its internal release date, which is actually quite impressive for Riot Games.
Definitely, yeah.
And to be honest with you, I continue to think that this game looks good. I think it looks really good, and if I had a half-decent PC, I'd maybe give it a go.
Yeah, I watched some footage from it the other day. I read a really interesting kind of deep dive of impressions on Polygon, which I'll put in the show notes on PlayersToo.com. I don't play this type of game at all, really, but it does sound like it's doing a lot of interesting things, and watching it was quite easy to follow. I can see where the interest for players lies. So do you think this is going to be another Twitch stormer? Like, when it gets fully released, is it going to take over, maybe even, you know, knock those top games off the number one slot?
Well, it already was, mate. It was in closed beta, and it already was up there on Twitch. I've not been on Twitch recently. I'm not really a Twitch guy anyway in general. But it was always up there. It was up there with your Fortnites, with your CSGO, with your Dotas, with your League of Legends. It was right up there with those games. And I think when this launches, it is going to be a big, big hit. Yep. And I know that when Apex launched, it broke a whole bunch of records for the amount of streams in the shortest amount of time or whatever. I think that we're talking that territory there. Riot Games as well, it is so embedded in the PC gaming sphere, you know. Yeah, I think this is going to be huge, honestly. I think it's going to be massive. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is time for a beer, and then we will be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is the games we do not play, Lewis. What does that mean?
What does it mean indeed, Mike? Well, yeah, this is... I basically wanted to jump into a discussion about the franchises and the genres of gaming that we don't really touch and why that is and what would maybe tempt us towards some of them. So I guess this all springs partly from Valorant, as we just discussed in our shout-outs. That's coming out and it sounds really interesting. As I mentioned, I've read some stuff about it, and the fact that it seems to blend elements of like CSGO and Overwatch and Rainbow Six, it feels like that would be a really exciting and interesting thing to play. And Mark, I know I am not going to play that game. And that, to me, coupled with the idea that I picked up XCOM Chimera Squad based on it being a sort of a version of a type of game that I don't play but would really like to be more involved with. Those two things have been kind of spinning around my head the last few days. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about franchises, genres, types of games that we maybe don't play as often as we used to, or that we really wish that we had picked up at some point, or that, you know, what would tempt us to try them out. So I guess just to start off, as a general question to you, Mark, how broad or flexible do you think that your own gaming tastes are? Is there anything that you don't really play and anything that you absolutely categorically will not play?
I don't think that there's anything I would say that I categorically wouldn't play. I think that I am quite flexible about what I would play in as a video game. Do you know what I mean? I play everything from first-person shooters. I do play open-world games. Of course, story-focused games is by far and away the thing that I play the most. But you were mentioning to me that I don't really play many open-world games anymore, which is something I hadn't really thought about. The last proper, like, big open-world game that I played was Horizon Zero Dawn, as you pointed out to me, which is, in my head doesn't really compute because I do quite like open world games. Yeah. But that might be the last properly huge open world game that I have played. And speaking about the why is that? I suppose it's time commitment. It's time commitment that comes down on a lot of these things, isn't it? Because when you get a huge open world game, there are side quests on side quests on side quests. The story itself is 30 to 40 hours long. Do you know what I mean? So you're probably talking about being in the game for 50 plus hours, I would have thought, at least for most modern open world games, you know? I know that the same thing was true about you in XCOM, and the reason that you didn't play XCOM 2 or didn't continue playing XCOM 2 is that you didn't feel that you had the time to commit to it.
That's totally it, yeah. With XCOM 2, I bought that game, I played that game, you know, extensively for a week or so, and then just realised I was absolutely nowhere through it, and it was going to take so much more time to connect that up to Chimera Squad. One of the main reasons, well, there's two things there. So there's the time commitment, and there's also the price, which, as we mentioned at the time, Firaxis on Steam were giving the game away essentially for half price. It was like under a tenner when I bought it. That is an immediate incentive to try a game if it's free or close to being free.
Yeah, certainly.
But the other thing that Chimera Squad was doing that really drew me in, other than shortening the kind of length of the XCOM experience, was trying out new ideas and experimenting with what that type of game could do. And I just really like when a company is upfront about doing that. Not that I play a lot of them, but I like a lot of these standalone spin-offs, like your Uncharted Lost Legacies, where they're kind of like, we just want to try out a little thing here and we'll put out a game like that.
Yeah, just playing with the formula.
Yeah,
you know
totally.
I mean? I love stuff like that too, man. I've got to say.
And I'm always really excited to try that stuff out and give companies a bit of a chance with that sort of thing. But yeah, time and money, I think it's fair to say those are the two big blocks for a lot of people. And so if you were to remove that, is there anything that you think that you might play more of if the time investment particularly wasn't an issue?
Honestly, JRPGs. Yeah. I'd play more JRPGs. I would almost certainly have played Persona 5 by now. I would have probably have also played Persona 4. I would have went back and played Chrono Trigger, which is a game that has been on my mind recently for various reasons. that I've always wanted to play, and it's so in my wheelhouse, you know. But I've just never got around to it. It's stuff like that requires like a huge time commitment. And I was just kind of thinking now about why I feel more comfortable jumping into a 90-hour JRPG than I do jumping into 50 or 40 hours of XCOM. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think that there's a sense of progress that comes along with those games, JRPGs and whatever. Or I suppose it's actually the inverse of this. I suppose with XCOM, sometimes it felt to me as if, oh, well, did I even progress?
Yeah.
Sometimes with big open world games, it feels like that as well. Like you jump in for a couple hours, you do a side quest and you dick around a little bit, and then you come out of that gaming session and you're like, did I achieve anything at all? Whereas in story focused games, it feels as though you're always doing one thing and then it's on to the next thing, then it's on to the next thing, it's on to the next thing. It doesn't spin out as much. It's a lot more self-contained. And I don't know, like I think that might be something for me, is that sometimes I feel as if the lack of progress is quite off-putting. I feel this a lot about online shooters as well. So for example, there's a big group of my friends that play Rainbow Six. They've played Rainbow Six since it started coming out. They've stuck with it forever. A few of them were just on playing it this evening even. So they still play it all the time, and that's a game that I wish I got involved in so that I could play with my friends. But when that game first came out, I didn't have the time to dedicate to it, and now I've sort of missed it. So it feels as though I can't jump into that. And something like this is true of Fortnite, where there isn't any tangible progress. It's just the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and it's the competitive nature in people that keeps them going and trying to get a better score and trying to get more kills and trying to win these matches, which is exciting and exhilarating when it happens even. And I've experienced that through Apex Legends. That was just my battle royale of choice, but even that I fell off of because I was just like, right, I've done everything in this I want to do. Nothing at that point had changed within the game, so it was still on the original map and whatever. I felt as if, I'm kind of done with this. I'm quite happy to move on to something else now. I don't know. I feel as if a real sense of progress is something that I look for in a game, I suppose, which these sort of games don't really provide, you know?
Yeah, not in a traditional sense, at least, because obviously, you know, Fortnite, and I don't know enough about Rainbow Six, but, you know, there's a constant ticking up of XP.
Yeah,
and you're constantly
exactly.
trying to unlock stuff.
I bought the Apex Legends Season Pass, the first ever Apex Legends Season Pass, which actually wasn't that great, and I think they've improved that a lot since then. But even that, I was kind of like, all right, okay, cool. But I mean, I never even finished that Season Pass. Like, I'd given up on the game before the season had ran out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I still had plenty of time to go in that Season Pass.
I remember at the time, it sort of felt almost like you were just chucking your money in the tin for them, since the game that you had sunk many hours into
free,
was
and I played it so much. Like, I was, I think it was £8 or £9 or something like that. And I was just like, take it. I'm happy with this.
I think you hit on there as well, like the other big reason that these service games or battle royales or whatever, the reason that some click and some don't, or certain ones click for certain people and certain ones don't, and that is the community around them. The fact that, you know, you said there that a lot of your friends are playing Rainbow Six Siege and have been since day one. I wonder what would tempt them to jump to a Valorant, say, if they've already kind of embedded in that game. And I suspect that that's why something like The Division 2, when it launched, other than kind of not having tons and tons to do, really didn't really get the traction that people expected it did, because after a certain amount of time, these games, they sort of find their groove. And I think it's a real job for developers to do things with new games that can draw people out of them. So Valorant's blend of kind of several different types of game, I think, will absolutely achieve that. But you're really trying to crack into people's friendship groups, right? You're trying to get your friends to say, okay, we'll stop playing this for a while and we'll try this other thing. And other than the free-to-play model, I think that's a really difficult thing for developers and publishers to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why the free-to-play model works so well, and I think that's why Valorant coming out in that closed beta, which just went boom, you know what I mean? Because it was Riot's new game, you know, which let a whole bunch of people get in early as well, and I'm sure all the big Twitch streamers were all involved in that as well, and all the big YouTubers and whatever, and much like what Apex Legends did with their launch. I'm sure that Riot would have been falling over themselves trying to give these people free keys to their game, you know?
Absolutely,
I totally agree. I think that the free-to-play model, which we're seeing more and more and more of these days, not least of which because it's profitable for everyone, but also because it does get potentially huge numbers of players into your game for nothing, and only a very small percentage of them in reality have to buy anything at all for you to make your money back.
Exactly.
This is why the free-to-play model nowadays, I mean, I know it was a bit shit for quite a long period of time, but we're kind of, as you said, we're finding a groove with these online games now, these service games, and everyone seems happy. Publishers seem happy, devs seem happy, and as long as you're keeping your gamers happy at the same time, then great. Absolutely, and I think that is a great way of onboarding people in that model.
It feels so vital these days because it's, it replaces to a certain extent the demo culture, which we've spoken about at length before. It allows you to get in and it allows you to try it.
Great point.
And then the thing there is like the game itself then has to speak to the player and give them reasons to stay hooked, because anyone sticking on Valorant, just because it is kind of the fresh thing at the moment, but anyone who jumps in and tries a bit of Valorant can so easily roll back to their Apex squad, they can roll back to their Destiny 2 campaigns. There's so much, particularly in that realm, the online squad-based shooters that people can go back to, that Valorant really has to, or any game coming out in future, it really has to do something interesting to grab people and get them to stay. And for me, like you mentioned online shooters there, obviously I've spoken at length before about how first-person shooters kind of generally I don't click with, and I was trying to think like what are the reasons that I have played some, what makes me want to try a game like that is kind of beyond my comfort zone, that I'm maybe naturally resistant to. And the big one that comes to mind for me was Wolfenstein, the New Colossus.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I think the reason that I went to that, other than playing it a bit with you and just really liking the gameplay and how it felt, was the story and the world that it put in. And I know that is a thing that can really drag me towards a game that I wouldn't normally be interested in, or a type of game that I wouldn't normally be interested in, if a game can introduce a story world or just some tweak to the formula that makes it feel a little bit different. Then I just wondered, is there anything like that? Can you think of anything where you would maybe be up for trying something that's a bit beyond your comfort zone if they could just integrate some other aspect of gaming into it?
To be honest with you, Lewis, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. For me, why I love games isn't to do with the mechanics of it, isn't necessarily to do with the competitive nature of it, although I have played a lot of competitive games in my time. Mm-hmm. It's to do with the story. It's about getting, for me anyway, it's about getting invested in characters, but it's about getting invested in worlds. That's what drags me to games, and that's why I play the type of games that I do. And I'm sure it's like the total opposite for someone who plays Fortnite or Valorant or whatever. You know what I mean? It's more about hanging out with your friends a lot of the time, but also it's the competitive nature. It's the mechanics of the game that you're like totally involved in and you absolutely love. For me, I suppose it would be humanizing the characters. I suppose, like for example, Fortnite, biggest game in the world and has been for a long time. Mm-hmm. Like it has no mascot. The characters in it change all the time, which is so interesting to me, because even back when Call of Duty was the biggest thing to hit the world, you know what I mean? At least it had a story campaign. At least there was characters there you could grab onto. At least there was a world that was built around, whether that was World War II or whether that was something totally futuristic, you know? But Fortnite is just, it's on an island. It's the same island. It evolves and changes every now and again, but it's the same island with basically faceless players. Yeah. And everybody loves it. And,
exactly, yeah.
And fair enough, but that personally is not what brings me to video games. It's just not. So for me to try something like Valorant for any length of time, like I would be very interested to try Valorant, but I mean try. Because I know that I won't play that for 100 hours.
Totally,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be quite interested to jump in, see what it's like, give it a bit of a go, and then probably after a few days gameplay just go, okay, that was cool, on to the next big story game that I want to get involved with, you know?
Well, and I think I feel similar. I mean, I talk a lot about not liking this type of game, but I agree with that. Like, and having watched a bit of Valorant even, I thought I would quite like to just see that, to play it a little bit and experience it and kind of be able to form my own opinion on it. But what I really want from a lot of that type of game is the sort of playground mode that Fortnite have brought in once or twice. A space where you can go and try it without, affecting someone else's game, I suppose, is the key to that. I don't want to be part of someone's squad where I'm the shit guy and I'm dragging their score down and everyone gets really mad. I would love to be able to play more of these games in a slightly more casual environment. That would instantly
I think you
make
have
that.
online anxiety, man.
I definitely do.
You definitely do.
Yeah, it's so many things there. I don't like headsets. I don't like talking to people while I'm gaming who I'm not sat next to, I suppose. But it's the feeling of like, I want to ease into this. I want to feel my way in, and I want to then know if I'm any good at it, and then do I want to stick with it. You talked about your pals playing Rainbow Six Siege. If there was a version of that you and I could just play some nice casual games, maybe just against bots, maybe offline even, to get a feel for it and get a sense of how to play it and start developing our skill a bit, I think I would be so much more likely to play the types of games that I don't currently play if that was possible.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Bringing it back around to Call of Duty, which is a game I'm very familiar with in these terms. They often had like Spec Ops missions. Mm-hmm. They had a campaign, obviously, as well. I think that you could play against bots in some of them on the online modes, but not all of them, and certainly not as a 2-player couch co-op. It was only ever the 1 player there as well. You could play like private games where it would just be me and you and like a local server, basically. But again, that would be competitive and would be less casual, I suppose, in the terms that you're talking about. But you're right, like games like that don't have anything like that. I mean, so far as I'm aware, anyway. I mean, Valorant doesn't have anything like that. Apex Legends never had anything like that. Fortnite certainly never had anything like that, you know?
Yeah, and it feels like a potential block for a lot of people. When we were playing Fortnite a little bit at the kind of beginning, when, you know, not long after it first came out.
At the peak.
yeah. Like, we were playing that then, and we had no idea about building. The whole thing just felt kind of overwhelming. I think that the little I played of Apex was kind of similar. Like, I feel like if I jumped into that now, I would just embarrass myself and anger the people I'm playing with, you know?
Well, I think if you jumped into it now, you probably would embarrass yourself, because the game has moved on so much. I mean, I'm the same. Like, I'm not claiming that because I played it a wee bit more than you did, I would embarrass myself any less.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the nature of these games is that they move on, so that learning curve would be there for you all over again, you know?
Totally that, yeah. I mean, that is so much of a blockade for people, I think, whether they are new to a game, new to a franchise, new to a type of game, or whether they're returning to it after a long while off. Like, there is a huge sort of psychological challenge there to a player, and I think that maybe, certainly over the years, has definitely put me off playing certain games or returning to certain games, even offline games, by the way. Think about returning to something that I had half played, even going back to XCOM 2 now and trying to pick up that save file. It's not going to happen. It's a real kind of mental block. So that, for new games or something that you're not familiar with, is real tough. And I think it's a shame, because it would be so good to try out a lot of different types of things that they're there and you know about them and you think would be cool to play, but you just never get to, you know?
I suppose that's on the player, though, to overcome that.
It definitely is,
mental block.
Yeah.
So yeah, try more things, ladies and gentlemen. Try more things, and we'll try better at trying more things as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will leave it there. I quite enjoy these pontificating discussions that we're having these days, Liz. Nice and loose. I like it. It can go wherever. But I think we will leave it there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find Players2 on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at players2.com. That's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. Apple Podcasts especially helps us out, but a 5-star review anywhere is great for us. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show, and thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. While you're over there as well, if you could leave us a review, that, again, it just helps us out more. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And if you're someone that's already done that for us, you're an absolute legend, and thank you so, so much. I'd also like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is Thomas Was Alone. I've still not started it, but it has been downloaded since basically the first week, Lewis. I have very little of Final Fantasy to finish, and then it will be straight onto this. It's a very short game, and it's a very cheap game. Like, you can pick this game up very, very cheap. So if anyone's thinking, oh, they've missed the boat on this, or they're not going to have enough time to play it, you definitely will. Like, it's probably like 4 or 5 hours max. So if anyone does want to play along, just know that you've not missed the boat. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.